always count on a Legacy of Kain fan to correct you if you're saying something wrong. They're infamous for that.
We are. Hey, and welcome back. Today we've got Slampbell on, and today we're going to talk about something really, really cool. And of course, lots and lots and lots of things Legacy of Kain. So, welcome to Pillar Talk. Pillar Talk is one-on-one conversations with Legacy of Kain fans from anywhere and everywhere. Yes, I know the name is suggestive. No, I'm not going to change it. Thank you so much for being on. This is great. I am so excited that you reached out.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys, making the time to have me.
Yeah, you got it. So first off, just introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, and how you got into Legacy of Kain.
So I go by the online moniker Slampbell. I'm a graphic artist from New York, and you want the long story or the short story about how I got into Legacy of Kain?
Do the long version. That's what we like.
I always have to think back to what year it was. It must have been before Soul Reaver 2 came out, so it had to be between 99 and 2001, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who lived down the block from my grandmother. He had a Dreamcast. I would go over his house almost every single day when I got back from school. And he had a bunch of different games on the Dreamcast, House of the Dead, Power Stone. We played a lot of Power Stone, Ready to Rumble Boxing. And then one day he showed me, he's like, oh, this is really cool vampire game. So he boots it up, and I'm probably going to be preaching to the choir on this. I was blown away by the cutscene. 7-year-old me is watching, the opening cutscene to Soul Reaver. And I think the thing that really got me about it, thinking back on it now, is the music. I think the music is the thing that really hooked me. Information societies, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of it. Ozar Midrashim. That track, fell in love with it. Oh, you got the album right there.
In arm's reach.
Yeah, within arm's reach. It's so funny to listen to that track, the entirety of it, not just the snippet that they used in the intro, because it has such a different tone. First of all, I think the opening monologue, he's talking about a holographic Ronald McDonald, which, tonally, I don't think fits Legacy of Kain at all. But I love that track. And especially, when the choral element comes in, when Raziel's, waking up and looking at, how he's been destroyed, he throws his cowl over his shoulder. Seeing all that, really, really hit me as a kid. I don't know how to put it into words, how I felt, but, it immediately hooked me. I was motivated. I wanted to achieve the thing that he wanted to achieve, because I just resonated with whatever was going on in the cutscene. So up until, I want to say, my teens, that was the only game that I'd played. I hadn't played Blood Omen. I hadn't played Soul Reaver 2. I hadn't played Defiance, Blood Omen 2. I actually still have not played Blood Omen 2 to this day.
Wow.
I got Defiance when I was at a GameStop. I must have been 14 or 15. And I picked that up. And then about halfway through the game, there was one point where the rest of the game just would not load. So I only got half the game on the disc. I don't know if it was a scratch on the disc or something, but only half the game would load.
That happened to me with Soul Reaver 2 when I tried to go back and replay it in 2000. I want to say it was 2006, 2007.
Right.
Yeah, something happened to the disc, and boom. Nope, no more, nothing after Dark Forge for you. Sorry.
Right, nothing. So it's tragic when stuff like that happens. But fortunately, there's YouTube. And so I got on YouTube and I watched all the cutscenes, and I got up to speed with the story. And over time, I loved Raziel as a character when I was a kid. But as you get older, and I think that this happens with a lot of people, I started to resonate more with Kain. I'm like,
yes,
it's funny. My girlfriend was playing through the games with me, because she's obviously never, she's heard me talk about these games that I love so much, and she's never played through them. So I'm playing through the remasters with her. And then she turns to me one day, we're playing through it. She's like, Raziel's kind of stupid. And I was like, I'm like, he's tragic. He's tragic. He's not stupid. He's tragic. But I understand where you're coming from. So I think that's what makes him a great character. But then you realize that Kain kind of, I guess, shoulders more of a responsibility, whereas Raziel is just kind of chasing these overzealous impulses that he has, and for the right reasons, but it always ends up in some kind of tragedy.
Yeah. I love how Amy Hennig described him in an interview for Soul Reaver 2, and that was he's a self-righteous twit.
Yeah, yeah,
And like that's his core trait, but it's so like his arc is so fascinating. To give you a little background on like on my history with the series,
sure.
I had played Blood Omen in 1997, and I had gone like it was I was hanging out with my first work friend. Right, we worked a swing shift, and then after that, we went over to his house, and showed me a bunch of video games because I hadn't been into video games for years. Showed me like Planescape. I think it was Planescape Torment. Showed me one of the I want to say it was Crash Bandicoot was another. It's like, hey, look at the graphics now on video games. I'm like, oh, holy crap! And then he showed me Blood Omen, and I was like, holy sh! This is what games are now.
Right, right,
Because it
right,
had been like 2, 3 years since I'd played any video games, and in the '90s things were moving so fast, right? And
right.
so I fell in love with Blood Omen, absolutely loved it. And then I heard when Soul Reaver was announced, I was so excited because the Soul Reaver was my favorite weapon in Blood Omen, and so I was like, oh, what are they gonna do with that? Are we gonna see Kane again? Oh, that's gonna be awesome. And then I heard it's a new character. And the fan reaction to new character, and
Yeah,
and I was just like,
yeah.
okay, why can't we play as Kane? This is ridiculous. And I'm like 18 at the time, so it's like I can't control my frustrations like I can now. But Raziel won me over in 5 minutes in that first cutscene. That
Yeah.
first cutscene is just so well done, and it
It's
gives you,
powerful.
yeah. And I would go as far as to say that's my favorite cutscene of all time. And so yeah, I mean, I was, let's see, I was 18 when Soul Reaver came out. So being 7, man, I can only imagine how powerful that must have been for you.
Conversely, I can only imagine what it was like being 18 and then, seeing so much of Kane and then seeing him become an antagonist in the second game. That must have been an interesting phenomenon to happen to you.
Oh yeah.
I played through the first Blood Omen, and what I did like about what they did, you mentioned the Soul Reaver, is that
Hmm.
I think that was planned from the start for it to be some kind of device that would create a new timeline.
Yeah.
I think that was planned from the beginning because there was some interview. I don't know if it was with Amy Hennig, and she was talking about because she worked on Blood Omen. I don't know if
Hmm.
she was talking about the development of Blood Omen or it was another developer. It might have been Dennis Dyack, but one of them said that was planned. That element of the Reaver converging with another Reaver in time was planned all the way back since Blood Omen. There is that image of William falling and the severed Reavers on the ground. They had planned that all the way back since then. So I thought that was incredibly cool that it was a consistent story element. It
Yeah.
wasn't an add-on.
Hmm. I loved that. Like I really enjoyed Blood Omen. Just all the way up until William dies, and then we see Mobius's plan unfold. And like I went from really enjoying it to absolutely loving it
Right.
because it's like, okay, this is a real narrative genius at work here. And so I loved that so much, and I loved especially where they took it in Soul Reaver 2, where they took that setup in the changing histories and completely paid it off with where Raziel ends up at the end of Soul Reaver 2. Just I am not nearly smart enough to write a paradox story like that.
And that was actually one of the things that and I watched your interview with Raina recently, the part 4, and
Hmm.
this was actually brought up during the interview.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask this
Hmm.
because and maybe this is getting too much into the weeds too early on, but
Go for it.
as I understood at that point in time, Raziel was supposed to be drawn into the Reaver at the end of Soul Reaver 2.
Hmm.
Kane pulling the Reaver out created a new timeline.
Hmm.
So up until that point, Raziel, I was about to say Raviol, Raziel was supposed to enter the Reaver.
Yes. Keep in mind that the history that's created after he refuses to kill Kane earlier on in Soul Reaver 2,
Right.
that is the next history after the William paradox. And let's see, hang on, I got to count my histories. Timeline. Okay, let's see.
I think it's 4 of them, right?
Yeah, there's 4. So let's see. We'll count backwards. Timeline 4 into Soul Reaver 2. Timeline 3, the refusal. Timeline 2. yeah, timeline 2 is when William dies. Timeline 1 is when whatever happens at the beginning of Blood Omen 2 before. So I can get nuts about the
Right, right.
timeline 0 theories because there is a timeline where the Nemesis.
Where Kane did not kill William, right?
Yeah, well, even better. There is a timeline where the Nemesis never becomes the Nemesis.
Right.
But do you know why the Nemesis became the Nemesis?
Was it because of Mobius or no?
It was because a vampire tried to assassinate him and failed.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So if you take a look at the Ancient Sten's timelines chart, which is like that's the definitive chart in my
Right,
opinion,
right, right.
you'll see in timeline 1, Kane fails. William becomes the Nemesis.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was always meant to be that he was going to go back in time and William would become the nemesis because of Kane. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, and I feel like that timeline 0, where the Nemesis never becomes the Nemesis, he's always William the Just. There is no vampire assassin because no
Right,
Mobius has sent him back in time.
right,
And so I have this theory that there was a timeline where Mobius was not corrupted. Now was of course corrupted, and he did of course send Kane back in time. And the way that history and the way that timelines and Legacy of Kane work is that what happened always happened because it happened, and it didn't happen any other way
right,
unless two Soul Reavers clashed in the same time and place. So,
right.
oh, this stuff just scrambles your mind.
So I would have to assume that in the original timeline that you're talking about, Kane was not armed with the Soul Reaver. He was sent back in time without the Soul Reaver.
I would have to assume that Kane was either sent back in time without the Soul Reaver or he lost. This
Right.
was a possibility where he lost. So that I don't actually have the answer to. This is a thing where I would really love folks to weigh in the comments and based on your own research and everything that you've heard, weigh in and tell me. And if I'm getting it wrong, tell me now.
Right, right, right. Yeah, no, you can always count on a Legacy of Kane fan to correct you if you're saying something wrong. They're infamous for that, and
We
I'm
are.
guilty of that as well. As I'm playing through the games, my girlfriend's asking me questions, and
Uh-huh.
I kept getting tinges of frustration because I'm just like, oh, you just don't get it. You don't get why this happened. And I'm like, wait, no, hold on. I've been steeped in this franchise for years and years and years.
Yes.
He's just getting into it. So, I had to dial it back. And you probably understand what I'm talking about.
I totally understand what you're talking about. But to be fair, I forget about stuff. I was having a conversation the other day and with a commenter, and they had asked why, when Cain died, a new guardian wasn't born. And so I had all of these theories. It's like, well, I'm sure Mortanius could hold over his soul because he has power over death, and this, that, and the other. And a good friend of the channel jumped on a message and said, so no new guardians can be born until the pillars are cleansed. You know this.
Mm,
And I'm like, yes, of course I know it, but I forgot. So
right,
it's
right.
that's one of the things.
There's a lot of rules to keep up with, and I think that's.
Yeah.
I remember one of the developers on Dead Sun. He came out and said that the story of Legacy of Kane was a Gorgian knot. In other words, it's something that
Hmm.
it's going to be impossible to unravel, and
Hmm.
I think it says something that even when the diehard fans have occasional moments of, oh yeah, you're right. Oh, I forgot about that. Right.
Yeah.
There's things that we forget. So I can only imagine that somebody who's tasked with continuing the story is going to have, and somebody who doesn't live in the universe the way that
Hmm.
we do is going to have a way tougher time.
And here's my solve for that. You rely on the folks who've been keeping the flame alive for 17 years, and
Right.
that's Reynard and Baziel and Avum.
Right. Right.
And that's
Right.
but I also think that, like, from a creative standpoint, like, you're an artist and you kind of understand how this works. I feel like the creative process thrives with challenge and withers with sycophancy. So if you have an echo chamber of people who are just telling you that your idea is great all the time, you're going to turn out shit. If your ideas are being challenged, though, and you've got a team of people helping you helping you raise your idea to a level that it couldn't have reached on your own. I think that's where creativity really starts to shine, is in that collaborative process. Now, it's not to diminish the contributions of any one person. I mean, Amy was a genius, but she didn't work in a vacuum also. So she had
Right.
people around her who were helping elevate that process at the same time. So
Daniel Cabuco is a major name, and I was
hero,
surprised. I was surprised to learn how much of the writing process that he was involved in. And
yeah.
like he came up with some of the story. His
Hmm.
designs, I forget if they probably work both ways. His designs probably influenced the story and vice versa. So,
Hmm.
he's just as much. I was telling, once again, I was telling my girlfriend about this. He's just as much a writer as he was a designer.
Yeah.
I thought that he greatly contributed to the story. So yeah,
Hmm.
she was surrounded by a great team of people. All A-listers, in my opinion.
100%. And that's, you look at these original teams and the team for honestly the team for Defiance Remastered. They're not paying me. I'm just saying that I am part of the creator program, but that just means I get keys every so often. But the amount of synergy that has come from this team has just been really, really super, super exciting. One really awesome fact about Slambell: he is one of the people who have brought to light a lot of the information we have about Dead Sun. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the story of Dead Sun, one, I highly, highly, highly recommend you go and watch this documentary about it. Excellent, excellent information. The short version is that the story it takes place in a far future timeline from Legacy of Kain. The humans have been prospering for some time. However, they're now infertile. And for the first time in forever, Asher, a human priest, and his wife are about to have a baby. During a festival, their entire village is murdered by Gain, a vampire, a descendant of, we assume is a descendant of the vampires of Cain. However, Asher's soul hangs on and manages to displace Gain from his body. So Asher is in control of Gain's body, but Gain still sticks around and is now a spectral antagonist slash voice in his head as Asher tries to find a way back to mortality or find what it is he's supposed to do as he discovers all the mysteries that there is to discover in Nosgoth now. And the crazy thing about Dead Sun was how far into development they were when it was canceled. And but yeah, a lot of this information, including this wild clip here, came through Slampbell here. So tell us a little bit about like that whole process. How did you develop this source? How did all this information come to light?
Well, fortunately, I was digging through my emails recently, and I was kind of able to create a timeline because it's been this is a story that spans over about, I want to say, 8 years now.
Hmm.
The first time I reached out to this developer on the series was back in 2018 when I checked my emails.
Hmm.
I think the first time that I got a response from them was in 2020, and they were very open and willing to discuss things with me. I figured, well, while I have your ear, let me ask you every nerdy question that I have about the series, and some things that I've seen people write online, questions that they've had. They answered a slew of questions, probably more than they really should have afforded me time for. They were very generous in sharing their answers with me, and I tried to go for round two. I did inform some of the Legacy of Kain community that I was in touch with this individual, and never got around to round two. And I reached out to them again recently before this interview to try to maybe pull a few more questions out. But I think that the communication's cut now. But yeah, I was gracious enough to get the answers that I did, and I think that it shed a lot of light on the development of the series and where it was going and how close it actually was to the original series. Now, I understand that there are
Hmm.
some certain, grave sins that Dead Sun committed. I think we're all aware of that, but
You, vampire.
at the same time, it was very thematically on point, I think,
Hmm.
with the original series, especially with
Hmm.
the concepts of a sterility, because
Yeah.
the entire idea behind the pillars was that vampires are not born, humans are born. So the pillars are going to start picking human guardians.
Hmm.
Sterility directly ties into like the Wheel of Fate. I think that they were really doing their research. They were adding some things on, but I think that they were actually more fans than people might give them credit for, the developers of Dead Sun.
That's something that I felt like really kind of came through in Bazielem's documentary. That a lot of this information, I think, a lot of this information you provided ended up in that documentary. So as you were, having this conversation with this developer, what would you say, the most surprising thing that you learned about Dead Sun?
What I think was most surprising to hear about was that they were actually going to include Kane in, if not a cutscene at the end, in a sequel game. That was, I think, the most surprising part, because there was actually some thread of the old series. There was the Pillars and the Silence Cathedral, but there was also a core character to the series. My source told me that he was going to be included in a cutscene at the end of the first game, possibly, and then definitely in a second game if they got the green light for that. There's probably a more, I'm paraphrasing, there's a more exact quote in the questionnaire, but Kane was supposed to be an element of the series. And, my source said that shadows of Kane were going to be, metaphorical shadows were going to be visible throughout the gameplay of Dead Sun. So his actions and the effects of his actions were going to be realized or manifested some way in the world of Nosgoth.
I definitely had opinions about about everything as I learned about it, but it seemed like, and tell me if this is supported in what you've learned, it seemed like the people working on the game really did love it. It was the leadership maybe that wasn't quite as into it.
So as a creative, what I'm learning about over time is that the more hands that are involved in something, there's more opportunities for things. There's more entropy. There's more opportunity for things to happen, good things to happen and bad things to happen. There might be good hands involved in the pot. There might be bad hands involved in the pot. And I think that you likely have a chance of things being diluted or things going in a direction where you don't want them to go. And I can't really say for certain whose fault it was. It could have been leadership. It could have been developers, but I'm getting the feeling that it wasn't the developers. They seemed like true fans of the series. You see this in movies. You see movies that have like a great idea. They're marketed very well, and then the movie comes out and it's garbage, or vice versa. The movie is great and it's marketed terribly and nobody ever hears about it. There's so many checkpoints along the way where something can go wrong. So it's like, who's to say who's really at fault for Dead Sun not being the greatest it could have been? I think that it's great what they did with that story. Whatever misgivings Dead Sun has with its fans, obviously, they're pretty blaring. But I think that something that they really got right was the fact that, there's a main character. He has some kind of tragic death. He has somebody kind of guiding him along the way, or maybe misguiding him. It's got all of like the legacy of Kane DNA. I remember there was one interview. I think it might have been Amy Hennig. She was at a conference. She said that she had a plan for Legacy of Kane to grow and expand, much like the Star Wars series did.
Yeah.
Where it was going to be this multi-layered, multifaceted franchise. And I think that's really the dream that we would all like to see. I think that as fans, we want to see, the full exploration of Nosgoth. First of all, is it a country? Is it a continent? Is it a world? What is it?
Right.
Because we've only explored such a small part of it.
Yeah.
And in the same vein, I feel like there's a very similar reaction to new content that a lot of Star Wars fans have. Now, I'm not particularly
thought about this a lot.
I'm not particularly steeped in Star Wars. It's something that I've kind of casually followed throughout the years. But I know that when new content is added on, the diehard fans say, like, this isn't my Star Wars. And I've noticed that there's, a similar reaction recently, for better or for worse, with the recent edition of Ascendance. And so now it's become, it hits a lot closer to home, because it's like, oh, this is
my house.
This is what they were going through, experiencing that.
I've been super steeped in Star Wars my entire life.
Okay.
And so it's like, this is something I feel like I actually have something useful to say on, is that, there is this knee jerk, and it's always the people who are loudest. There is this knee jerk against new stuff. And, granted, I've seen amazing Star Wars. I've seen absolute garbage Star Wars. But like, its age and how recently it came out doesn't really impact personally, my opinion on it. I was reserving judgment on the sequels until they were done. And altogether, they do not work. They do not work because there was not a plan. There was not a vision from beginning to end.
Right.
George Lucas may not have had known exactly where he wanted to take it, but he had a general idea.
Right.
And and things change, things evolve. But let's say every trilogy of movies is a conversation, right?
Right.
It could be one person talking from beginning to end. It could be a few people talking back and forth with each other. Well, the Star Wars sequels were an argument with each other. And, regardless of anybody's opinion about Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, and I definitely have my opinions on which one I like and which one I hate, it elicited strong reactions. And I feel like, and then there's always something with Star Wars that does elicit that same reaction. But like, there's also the Andor series. Nobody asked for it. Nobody wanted it, but it was amazing. It was incredible.
Right.
The recent Maul Shadow Lord series is incredible, but it treads really safe paths for a Star Wars thing. Where for instance, the show The Acolyte really really did not play it safe. It was working in a new era, and it was telling a very different story. And one thing that I've learned, I'm obsessed with deconstructionist stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love deconstructionism. A lot of Star Wars fans do not. They do not like deconstructionism. So it's really, really kind of interesting to kind of see not just what the loud conversation is about it, but sales as well. And that leads me into The Dead Shall Rise and Ascendance. And, most of my issues with Ascendance come from the story. I feel like as a game, I'm a Castlevania fan too.
Right.
I like the old school Castlevania.
When I was playing as Seraphina Raziel, and I was going up the stairs, and like
feels very Dracula's.
I was like, oh my god, like this is hitting this is sating my need for a Castlevania game right now. It felt very good to see that.
Ascendance, like every Legacy of Kain game, has some moments it can call its own. In our playthrough, we had to turn the music off for the last 2 episodes because we kept getting copyright claimed, even though we're in the creator program. It was so funny.
The Cell Dweller tracks?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
The music itself, like I'm not a huge fan of it because I feel like it kind of, for the most part, it clashes. But there's one moment, the track Wings of Destiny in the level where you're going to Kain and you jump up in the air and you fly and the guitar hits at one point.
Right.
It's one of those that is one of those moments that really, really worked for me.
So first of all, I grew up on, Newgrounds, and I love, maybe you remember this series, the Zombie series, starts with an X.
I didn't see that one. Mm-mm.
So it was animated by this guy named James Farr, and it was a great Flash animation. You could probably still find it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And in the outro to one of the episodes, he uses a Cell Dweller track. And and that was like what first really introduced me to Cell Dweller. And Cell Dweller has always, in my opinion, captured that kind of turn of the millennium vibe, which is, that's the era, that's when I grew up, and that's where I would say a majority of my art influences came from. Yeah. So when I heard that he was going to be working on the Legacy of Kain, I was stoked. I was like, this is exactly the guy who should be developing Legacy of Kain music. Any statement that I make about Ascendance, I'm not an Ascendance apologist. I definitely probably have the same gripes that everybody else has about it. But I think that at the end of the day, we need to support the series. Otherwise, if that was our sequel series, we're not getting an Andor if we don't support it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think that we should support the creators for better or for worse right now. This is just my opinion, though. Mm-hmm. In hopes that we will get something better down the line. When I was sitting down and I was playing Ascendance for the first time, and like the music hit, I was like, wow. I'm like, the story might not be working for me. Some of the deliveries might not be working for me, but this music all of these are bangers. Everything from that game hit, in my opinion. I thought it was great. I thought that, it captured kind of like the era where the games were coming out. And then it also captured, I think it was the level with, the first level where you play as Kain. it felt like something that like Kurt Hartland would have come up with. It felt like something that belonged to like the Soul Reaver era, kind of like that, like like almost like a post-apocalyptic kind of vibe. It felt like sonically, like it felt within that era, and it felt like it related back to like the Soul Reaver games. So I was happy. I was happy to see, to hear rather, not see, to hear what Cell Dweller produced with the soundtrack. Things that I wasn't so happy about. There's one particular line, and I can't remember how it went.
I think I know where you're going. Is it the one about the hand?
No, no,
Oh,
not the decapitation line. It's Lieutenant Raziel is dismissing Alaylath, and when he's dismissing her, he says something along the lines of, "I have other needs to attend to.
I've indulged this distraction long enough. My obligations lie elsewhere."
He was doing, Michael Bell was doing a great job of maintaining his English dialect throughout the game. And then in that one line, you just hear him revert back entirely to an American accent. And that, I grimaced when I heard that. And then once again, relating back to something that we were saying before, I don't know whose fault that was. Maybe it was a bad take. Maybe it was poor direction on the voice director's part. Who's to say who's at fault? But I heard that line and I'm like, that should not have passed. That should have immediately sent up a red flag, and it didn't. And it was one of those moments where like it took me out of the game. I was sitting there and I'm like, how did that fly? How did that get in there? And I obviously that's a nitpick, but that was one of the things that for me really stuck out about the game that I personally didn't like. I'm trying. There are certain story elements that I have to kind of rationalize to myself to accept. But that was I couldn't get around that one. I heard that line and like it was like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, the voice performances. Simon, friggin' incredible. Highlight of the whole experience.
Rise, Raziel, my firstborn. Rise and serve.
It seems like Simon has inhabited this role every day for the last, 23 years, and he did not missing a beat. Especially, did you get to do the part where you got the pillar trivia wrong? Did you get to hear his poetry and his other lines?
So being a tryhard, I got every single one of them right. Like I was like, I don't want to get this wrong because I don't know what the consequence is going to be. But then I listened to your playthrough. To hear what all of the him throwing shade around. So thank you for that. That's how I actually got the chance to hear that rather than playing through the game.
I'm glad you thirst for blood because you obviously never thirsted for knowledge.
I liked Simon's delivery. He does, obviously, listen, happens to everybody. Even Tom Kenny, you can hear it in his voice now. Like when he voices SpongeBob or Spyro, there's like a different quality to it.
Yeah.
You can't get around that.
Tempus edax rerum. Time devours all.
Time devours all. Right. That ended up being something I was going to expect regardless. I knew that he was going to sound different. I was really impressed by how Richard Doyle and Anna Gunn sounded. I thought that they sounded almost identical. And I thought that Richard Doyle was actually doing more of a Soul Reaver 2 take on Mobius than a Defiance one.
Fate delights in such cruel symmetry.
Because Defiance is very like gravelly.
Yeah.
But then
the mask is off and he's full villain at that point.
Yeah, but Soul Reaver 2, he's still, he's acting like, like a doddering old man and like, like he almost sounds like I don't know, almost like a Merlin figure, but like, like a
still the kindly mentor.
I have sought only to aid you in your righteous quest.
Yes, exactly. You know who I was thinking of? I was thinking of Palpatine from Star Wars.
Yes, yeah.
He's very Palpatine in the beginning, but then he becomes very Sidious in Defiance.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
I thought that Simon did especially considering he's, I think, further up in age than Richard Doyle and Anna Gunn. I think that he did a solid job.
Yeah.
He sounds a little bit more raspy than he used to, but you can't avoid that. You get to a certain age, and as you said, time devour. What was it again?
Tempus edax rerum. So Latin for time devours all.
Time devours all. Yeah.
That's an achievement in Defiance Remastered.
Oh, cool. How do you get that one?
Beat the game in under 6 hours.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely didn't do that. Yeah, no, that
So
definitely that took me a couple days to play through that game again. One of the things that, despite all of the misgivings that Ascendance had, was that it still had a protagonist suffering some kind of tragedy and being led by another force that may or may not be in the better interest to follow along with. I don't think it's the thing that entirely makes up Legacy of Kain, but like I feel every single story has to have that element. It has to have somebody suffering some kind of tragedy and some other kind of malignant force guiding them and misusing them. You know, Mortanius and Kain, or I guess you really would rather say the Hilden and Kain in Blood Omen, the Elder God and Raziel in Soul Reaver 1, and then in Ascendance it would be Elelith and Kaisetzik.
And I agree that that's something that that they got right, is the motivation. So revenge, of course, that's the motivation right there. Revenge, and then sacrificing something of the being that you were, or your freedom, or whatever, to a supernatural benefactor, you know, for a chance at revenge. Kaisetzik kind of fulfilling that role of the elder god, and Mortanius in blood, you know, for Kain and Blood Omen. So as the, you know, the malefactor.
Right.
So they had the blueprint for it. It was the stumbles along the way.
Something also interesting, when I was reading the credits for Ascendance, Daniel Cabuco, it said, was listed as a designer for Kaisetzik.
Yeah, he did some concept art. Have you gotten to see that art yet?
I hadn't. No. Wow, these are interesting. So one of them almost looks like a monk.
Yeah.
One of them, he almost looks like Raziel. He's got a cowl and wings. It almost looks like he's got bandages around his arms. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is you know, classic Daniel Cabuco stuff here. But having both of these games, regardless of anyone's opinions about them, launch, I mean, it was still a very exciting time, and I just, you know, my sympathies on, you know, for Ascendance extend to the developers, the people who were working really ridiculous timeline to kind of get that thing out, and you know, I can feel love for the series in there. And I can feel love for the series in Defiance Remastered too. It's like I don't feel like anyone involved here doesn't love the series,
right? And
you know, so I think that's a thing that I wish more people would take into consideration. It's like, yeah, I've got my criticisms. You know, they've been spoken very, very vocally on the channel, and you know, I don't want to spend too much. I don't like to spend time criticizing stuff, especially when I've done it already.
Right. And at the end of the day, you know, we've been talking about how creative processes, they involve so many different hands. It really is almost like an impossible task to create a new Legacy of Kain game and get it right. You know, like it almost feels like capturing lightning in a bottle, because, you know, Blood Omen was a marvel in storytelling and voice acting. Soul Reaver was a technological marvel, and you know, like it fired on so many cylinders. You know, and then the follow up entries ended up carrying the series into what we have now. But I don't know. I don't think that it's an easy task to create a new game, and I almost feel like they were like not that they were set up for failure, but there was almost no way that you could make a satisfying new entry to the series. And I hope that I'm wrong, and that the next entry that comes out, we get something that, you know, we can resonate with a little bit more.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I dearly, dearly hope that we do see that.
In Ascendance, I did like, I don't know what they're called, the tomes that you pick up. One thing that I did like about it was how they explained the lore scrolls explained how I guess describe the nature of the time streamer, and that's something that I really like. They said that he's, and I'm paraphrasing once again, aligned to the pressure of time, and I think that kind of fits in with what you said about, you know, engineering all the factors into a small band, you know, kind of controlling the entropy to, okay, this is the range of possibilities that we're working with. They could end up out here, but let's narrow them down a little bit so that we can control where they go.
And
Um,
and that is 100% the role of the champion prophecy too in the fourth timeline.
which would be now that ended up being Raziel. He ended up being both champions, correct? Because he's got a dual nature.
That's right. And
Right.
they couldn't change the fact that he could choose, but what they could do is they could create this circumstance in which he could misinterpret it.
Right. So he was always destined to be the champion of prophecy, but kind of like putting the blinders on, so to speak. Like telling him, if you give somebody 3 doors and there's a prize behind each door, they got to pick one of the 3 doors. But what if there's like 10 prizes? What if there's 20?
Right.
If you give them 3 options, that's all that they're going to think that there is.
Exactly.
I think the metaphor tracks, right?
Yeah, no, it works for me. But I think another interesting thing about Mobius, and I agree, the lore scroll pointed at something really interesting with him. I almost think of Mobius almost like a genie. He's bound by that which he binds. He contains that by which he is contained. Does that make sense?
So he's not in control of time. He's in the time stream himself. He's a product of it just as much as he is manipulating it.
I think so. And I think that there are some the things that he can control. I think the interesting thing about Mobius is that at no point does Mobius have any choice. He did everything that he does because he did it. And
right. Kind of like a fatalistic idea, because he is also just as much subject to time as anybody else is.
100%. And I think that even though he has this reputation as a master manipulator, of course, we know that he is not the one really pulling the strings. He has been manipulated his entire life and then propelled down this pathway where he can see every instant of his life. He's never surprised, except for one very important time at the end of Defiance. He's never surprised. He knows exactly how his life is going to play out from beginning to end, and I think it's been that way ever since he met the Elder God.
I like that, and I'm thinking back to the mural of Mortanius and Mobius, and like they're starting a revolution. Mobius has got his arm up in the air, and he's actually looking kind of jacked, which I thought was you never really picture him that way. Mobius is very frail looking, but in this picture, he's he's painted like a hero.
Had a lot more protein then.
Oh yeah. He was protein maxing then. I thought that would actually make an interesting concept for a game. I remember that in one of your previous videos, you had mentioned, what do you think would make a good Legacy of Kain entry? Mm-hmm. And I remember when the survey came out, and I was so happy that Ascendance ended up doing this. When I was given the survey, I remember writing 3 things down. I said, I imagine there's a lot of crossover with Castlevania fans. Mm-hmm. So I imagine that a Castlevania style game would work very well. Plus, there's vampires in both games. Just made sense to me. And to do a prequel exploring, some earlier point in Nosgoth's history. One of the first ideas that Silicon Knights had as a follow-up to Blood Omen was to do a prequel about Vorador. I thought that with the backdrop of maybe Mortanius and Mobius starting their revolution, I thought that would be a great place to begin, because it's a comfortable place in the timeline where you're just recapping events that happened. You don't have to tell anything new. You're just expanding on something that, fans have always wanted to know about, and something that, once again, remains pretty constant.
The swords come out when I say this, but I really like the Netflix Castlevania series. I especially liked season 2. One, the voice actors in that show are amazing. Graham McTavish and James Callis. James Callis, by the way, would be a great Kain, I think. But he already played Alucard in Castlevania. So
right.
But no, I really enjoyed the Castlevania show, and I don't necessarily think the same showrunners should be handling Legacy of Kain, but I do think that there is something to that format that would really work.
Yeah, you're so limited with what you were given in the first few Castlevania games. There's wall chicken, you're fighting hammerfell monsters. The guy has a whip. In Castlevania 3, you get a couple. You
get friends.
You get friends, and then they just took that and ran with it. I tell this to all my friends who I talk about the Castlevania series with. Mm-hmm. I personally have an issue with the writing. in my opinion, it's a little it felt like a little bit overly edgy for me.
Oh,
But
okay.
but the animation was beautiful. The backdrops were beautiful. The story arcs were beautiful. I didn't catch a few of them on my first viewing, but then on my later viewings of it, I was like, oh wow, you know, Trevor really starts with this whole this aimlessness, and then he kind of finds like a will to live and a will to create life towards the,
Yeah.
you know, like I thought things like that, like they were very subtle, and I like that. I just wish the whoever was writing the dialogue was, you know, just you know, refining it a little bit more.
Yeah, it wasn't Amy Hennig, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, definitely wasn't Amy Hennig. No. They were no Amy Hennig.
You know, I would love to see Legacy of Kain spread out into more media. Say what you want about TDSR. The Fallen Brothers comics, I like. You know, the Melkai and
they did a good job of capturing the style.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they're like the detail in them is just really, really great. Each of them have a lore issue, which, you know, I go into in the videos, but whatever. You know, they're pretty good.
But it wouldn't be the first time that a comic was stricken from the canon, right?
No. So. Yeah, I count at least 3 before all of this. So, but
that's what I thought was interesting about The Dead Shall Rise. It almost felt like it was referencing one of the Soul Reaver comics was Raziel was shown a prophecy about what would happen to him in the future.
Yep.
And I forget who he's communicating with.
It's this demon that's inhabiting the body of this woman he's feeding on.
Right. And so when TDSR was doing you know, a vampire Hilden hybrid through a Lilith who was showing Raziel his future, I was saying to myself, I'm like, are they referencing that comic, or is this just like a coincidence? Because it just seemed like they were retreading the same ground. And I don't know, maybe they thought that they were doing the fans a service by trying to do something that was already done before. You know, there's a blueprint at least for it.
That's an interesting thought. I'd actually like to ask you about your Raziel and Smash Brothers video. I watched this, and if you haven't seen this video yet, here's the link. Go check it out. It's really, really good. It is incredibly well thought out. Like, I can tell it's made by somebody who deeply, deeply loves both series. And you have it thought out in such detail, like not just the move sets, but the conditions and every single possible thing. Like, this isn't a video, this is a design doc. Not to mention your animations of Raziel are just amazing. So tell me how that came about. Like, how did you have the idea for that?
Well, I was always drawing Raziel, you know, after I fell in love with Soul Reaver as a younger fellow. At some point, I got involved in the competitive scene in Smash Bros. I think when I was 25 or 26. And, you know, being an animator, I'm always studying how characters move. You know, things like frame rates and things like that are very important to me. So naturally, you know, when I play Smash Bros, I'll pause the game and I'll play it frame by frame just to see like the way that the characters move. And I don't know, like it just scratches a very particular itch in my brain to think about, like, well, if I was tasked with implementing Raziel as a playable character, what would I make him do? So, you know, I have to think about, like, you know, the initial animation when he tenses for a jump. It's called the jump squat animation.
Yeah.
In Smash Bros, they standardized them in the most recent entry to a 3-frame jump squat. So all characters take 3 frames to jump, or rather to initiate their jump. So when I was working on my video, I was thinking about, like, okay, not only do I have to think about this as a fighting move, but I have to think about it, you know, in terms of where does the hitbox land, or how does the character move, or is this move taking too long to execute? So, you know, it created some challenges that, you know, I enjoyed working through while creating it. The short version is that I just love Smash Bros. And I love Legacy of Kain, and I just wanted to put my favorite character into it. But, you know, it was a passion project, because there's nothing else that I would really work on for a year and a half for, you know, such little payoff if I didn't, you know, have my heart in it.
100%. You know, that really resonates with me, because the next Legacy of Kain video, the one that I put out last year, we worked on that for about 9 months, from the script to just pulling footage. And like now it's pretty, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's definitely not as time consuming for me to put together a Legacy of Kain video now, because I've got all the games captured. I've got all the games captured. We've got all this library of stuff. It's like, hey, I need that Faustus boss fight. Go grab it. I need the line where Raziel talks about how he doubts that the Elder God resurrected him. Well, okay, that's in Soul Reaver 2. Go grab it. But back then it was a lot more difficult, and I was still in the process of playing the games. So it's just like, okay, grab it, and then I rework a section, then I try to reword a section, I'd reshoot stuff. It was, yeah, I feel you there. It was
so much of the video was the ugly, I call it ugly work, the ugly work of having to, first of all, ask the video creators if I could use their footage, and then splicing through the footage to find individual moments. And something that I tried to do was I tried to capture certain aesthetics about the games that I always picked up on, and maybe somebody else didn't, but I wanted to include it in there because the guy who developed Smash Bros, he's like a gaming savant. He's so in depth, if you ever watched any of his videos, in how he thinks about the design behind a character. So I noticed that when Raziel picks up an item in the first Soul Reaver, there's like a kind of blue glow in his hand to indicate that the weapon is gonna snap to his hand. So in a couple of the animations that I had in the video, you see like that blue glow pop up. Or I always like the shifting dimensions animation, the shifting realms animation, where he kind of does a little dance, he kind of like moves his hands around. And I wanted to try my hand at it, because I've seen it done a million times, and I'm like, can I do it based off of memory? So then I watched the video once or twice, and then I just got to animating it. And there's particle effects that pop up, little details like that. I was like, I can't wait to like drop that in there, and like see how faithfully I can capture the original style that the original animation was done in. Something that I've wanted to do is I've wanted to showcase as best I can other Legacy of Kain creators. So you'll notice at the end of the video, some of my favorite Legacy of Kain fan musicians, I feature some of their work, because in Smash Bros, they come up with remixes of the character's theme music.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be really cool. It's like, wow, what if I just pull in from the community, like Biodynamic and Kyle Misko, like they do some great work creating their own renditions. I love Kyle Misko's version of the Necropolis. I think it's got such a gritty feel to it, and it really captures, I think, a more cinematic vibe for the Necropolis. Like it paints an idea in my head where I can picture, like, if Legacy of Kain were turned into a movie, I would want this as like the backdrop for it. Something that I think that you probably found really interesting, you probably know where I'm going with this, was that Raziel was almost originally voiced by David
Hayter. Yep.
Yeah. And so I take it you're a Metal Gear fan based on your other video that we watched, the top 10 of your favorite guys' video games.
The real me is no match for the legend, I'm afraid. So yeah, no, I'm a huge Metal Gear fan. As a matter of fact, this one I actually do have close by. There we go. There's the picture.
Is that you and David Hayter?
That's me and David Hayter right there.
So I travel quite a bit around around the United States. I go to various Comic Cons. I'm an art vendor.
Cool. Yeah.
So I go to all these different shows, and I go to almost every year. Not this year. They unfortunately didn't want me this year, but every year for the past 3 years, I've gone to too many games. And every year they invite, or almost every year they invite Charles Martinet and David Hayter. I would not ever want to get on either of those lines to wait for them. But I from a distance, like it's a cool moment. I'm looking across the show floor, and it's like, oh, that's Solid Snake. It's like weird moment from the I guess the attendee aspect.
I imagine it's a totally different experience when you're just kind of stuck in your one place. You're not there as a fan, you're there to work, and you're just kind of there in your one place. Like, I am at work, and David Hayter's over there.
It's at the end of the day, everybody's human, but you hear someone's voice so much, especially like Charles. I got a moment to speak with Charles Martinet after
cool.
the show. I didn't try to do anything fanish. I just went up to him and I was like, "How was your weekend?" And he was like, "Oh." He's the nicest guy on the planet. He's like, "Oh, everybody's lovely," and he's gushing about the fans, and it's like you're the reason everybody's here. And you talk about nice guy.
My favorite bit of Charles Martinet lore is that he plays Mario, of course, famously,
Right.
but he also plays Parthenax in Skyrim.
Yes, he's a dragon, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And like the mentor dragon, who's just absolutely awesome. We did a series of videos of, well, it was just felt like a series, but we did a video a few years ago that had some Parthenax in it. So it's been a long time capturing that part. But that's awesome.
I never got into Skyrim. My girlfriend's playing through it, or she was playing through it a few weeks ago. But yeah, no, I wish I got into it because it seems like a great series.
Well, you seem to have a life, so that's probably a good reason for you not to.
Arguably.
Yeah, Destiny and I have both sunk thousands of hours into Skyrim. It's easily one of our favorite games. So
the ones that I remember from your guys' top 10 were Halo, of course.
Yep.
But I also noticed that you guys put BioShock on there, and I was very happy to see that because, as you know, as a Legacy of Kain fan, the whole idea of constants and variables in Infinite, I was like, oh, this is a series I can get behind. I like the whole idea of, and BioShock Infinite goes into more branching timelines, whereas Legacy of Kain is one. But there are constants and variables in Legacy of Kain. There are certain
100%.
moments in history that have to happen, and then there are certain paths and divergence that can happen. So I just that theme alone, I think, is why I always liked Infinite so much. The first two games I like, but Infinite I think has a special place with me just for that theme alone.
I really enjoy the BioShock games too, and of course the original with its themes of free will, and how you could manipulate free will, and it was always really like one of the things that's really kind of the hardest to get your head around in Legacy of Kain is, okay, free will. What is it like to not have free will? How do they not have free will? Our behavior is almost preordained in a way by our circumstance. And in Legacy of Kain just kind of takes that to takes it to its logical extreme, in that these circumstances have been set up. They've been manipulated by Mobius or the Elder God or the Hilden, forces unknown, really, to keep these choices constrained in a very narrow band, and none more so than Kain's choice at the end of Blood Omen 1. He only has two choices at the end of Blood Omen 1, and that's refuse to sacrifice or give up his life to restore the pillars. Now, Kain, being who he is and knowing what he knows, he's never going to accept the sacrifice. He is only going to refuse it, and that entire situation was engineered for him to make that choice,
which would be a constant.
It would be a constant, and Raziel even says that in Soul Reaver 2. Kain's initial refusal at the pillars, that among all of the things that have shifted in the timelines, all of the manipulations, that one event has never changed.
Right.
So it is, the fulcrum upon which the destiny of this world turns. So
this might be a hot take, but something about Defiance that didn't, the remaster that didn't sit well with me. And listen, I loved all like the nods. I love the Terrell makeover. I love that Raziel and Kain look like they're CGI models from the original games. I just thought that the game lost a little bit of like the cohesiveness because there was so much effort for diehard fans to relate it back to the originals. I feel like it lost a bit of like the cohesive style that Defiance had. All the Defiance characters felt like they fit in a box, but then trying to relate it back to the original games, which I loved. But I feel like the average viewer might watch it and think to themselves like the art style seems to be going in a lot of different directions. Especially with the end. I was almost jarred to see this when Ariel shows up at the Spirit Forge at the end and she's in her Blood Omen design. Loved it for myself, but I was like, this is very jarring to see her in red at this pivotal moment in the game. I don't know. I might be weird for thinking this, but all of it together didn't really seem as though it fit. But I love the references. Does that make sense?
It does. So what you're saying is it didn't really feel like it was a cohesive art direction so much as
I feel as though in trying to relate it back to the diehard fans, they kind of lost something that your average viewer, your lowest common denominator that you're marketing to, like the person that you're trying to get to be a new fan of the series.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I think I can see that. Can't say I agree, but I think I can understand where you're coming from.
I want to express what I feel about the game for better or for worse, but you know, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I thought it was a bad game, or I thought the models were doing terribly. First of all, I like seeing the transition of old school style Terrell to the one that they ended the remake version. I was like, oh my god, that's perfect. Oh
yeah, man, that state of play trailer. Whew,
yeah,
man. Well, everybody saw me lose my shit about it. So
right. It's great that we got cameras to capture all of like these ephemeral moments, because you know, back like 30 years ago, you know, that would have been a passing moment, and that would have been like legend. Like, oh, I popped so hard during the state of play, but now it's like that's immortalized on YouTube.
The funny thing is, like, I had no idea that anything was going to happen. I just had this weird feeling. Like there'd been a couple of rumors, so I set up one of the cameras, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna put it on while I work. Something happens. I didn't think anything was gonna happen, and then, holy crap, something happened.
Right.
But no, I feel you, and I know that the team themselves want that criticism too. They want to hear, you know. The thing is, I am so effusive about everything Defiance Remastered that like most of my criticisms for Defiance go back to the original game, and to the marketing. Just the fact that they called it Defiance was a mistake. They should have called it Soul Reaver 3. Because
right. And I think that was the original plan for the game. I forgot
what all the design docs say.
I haven't seen any of that, but I remember that there was some kind of documentary somebody was doing. I really should have written this down beforehand, but I remember somebody mentioning that Defiance was originally supposed to be Soul Reaver 3. And it was a lot. It and Soul Reaver 2 were a lot less linear too.
Yeah.
There was more of a time travel element where like you could use time travel as like a mode of transportation, but not like you're moving from place to place. It's just that it was more analog how you would choose where you would go to. I think it was Baz. I think he was talking about it. He was talking about the lost levels and how they fit into the original plans for Defiance. That's what it was.
Yeah, and there's a couple of segments. There's some overland segments that demonstrate these little interstitial areas that you would be going through on your way from one location to another in Defiance. And,
right.
And like watching that and reading that actually made me really sad, because it's like my biggest gripe with both Blood Omen 2. Well, okay, maybe not my biggest gripe with Blood Omen 2, but a gripe that I have with Blood Omen 2 and Defiance is how linear they are. And, you know, Soul Reaver 1, I love so much because of the exploration. Blood Omen 1 too.
Playing Soul Reaver 1 and then immediately going into Soul Reaver 2 in the remasters, once again, this might be a hot take, made me realize how bad gameplay-wise Soul Reaver 2 was. Maybe bad isn't the way to say it, but how limited it was. Because when I was playing it, I was like, first of all, the movements felt slower. The combat from the first game going into the second game, the movement felt slower. But then also, you're kind of being guided into like the next area and the next area and the next area. And it's a lot of backtracking, whereas, you know, Soul Reaver was a lot more open, and, you know, you got to choose where you went. And there was always like a carrot at the end of the tunnel, depending on where you went. There was an upgrade.
Yeah.
There was like a forge, or there was a boss fight, or there was
a whole new area.
Right. Even like the Human Citadel. The Human Citadel really had like nothing going on. It's just like an area where like you hop into, I think there's like one or two vampires, and there's two Rahabim in the water, and then really you're just going through there to grab collectibles and you know, sip souls from the humans there.
As a treat.
It's right, as a treat. It's totally optional. You know, it's not something that really you have to do, but you know, it adds to the game. It makes the world feel lived in, and I think that that's the main thing that like that's the main thing that like got me into the game. The world felt lived in. The intro and the lived-inness of the world were the things that really drew me in. And then I stayed for the story and the writing.
Yeah.
But I think that's like Soul Reaver 2 just doesn't have that same quality that the first one does, unfortunately.
It's like this. It's this very linear track from the Seraphina stronghold in the south up to Ostenheim,
Right.
where Soul Reaver kind of had this web out, and then of course Blood Omen feel like it's not expansive, but it feels expansive.
Right.
And so that is something that I really, really missed. I know that, looking back in the content of Soul Reaver 2, there was much more that was planned. There were side quests, there were side areas that you could explore. And some of that we get to see a little peek of in the Lost Levels. Like they added the vampire NPCs. Did you get to see those?
Wait, they added them into the remaster?
Just into the Lost Levels. Not in the game itself. The Lost Levels for Defiance specifically.
Yes, I did. Yes, I actually did. I did get to see them.
Okay.
I know which. That's in the. That's when you're outside the stronghold, and there's like that little villa, and then you go up through the mountain path. Yes, I know. And it's all the same texture when you meet the vampires, right? It's all like one uniform texture everywhere. In the
there's actually two places where you can meet them.
Oh, okay.
There's that one. So as you're coming out of the stronghold, if you go right, jump into the lake, there's actually a tunnel that you can swim through and come up into another area, and you can find a couple more.
Oh, I got to go back and play that one now.
Yeah.
I had a moment like that when I was playing through one of the So first of all, I love the idea that they were making these, as you said, the interstitial areas where you can go from one area to the other, but it's bringing you to the next one. But it's kind of like a palate cleanser, and I feel like Blood Omen had a lot of that. Blood Omen had a lot of, you walk through wilderness or across a lake or through a swamp to get to another place, and it kind of cleanse your palate before you enter the new area and kind of got into the meat and potatoes of it. When I was exploring one of the Lost Levels in Defiance, I noticed that there was like a tunnel on like the side, and I jumped into it and I went down like this.
Yeah.
Like shoot. I was
the
like,
Overland area.
I was like, what is this? And like, I
Bridge of Khazad-dûm.
What was that?
I don't know. Like I feel like that must have connected to some other area, some other underground area. In Great Southern Lake, there's like this well almost thing that you can go down outside the Seraphina stronghold, and then there's a little tunnel that terminates. So I almost wonder if those two areas were supposed to connect.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder, like, what were they planning? What was going on there? And was there's a certain part once you get down that chute, you go across, and then the bridge collapses.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then that's where there was that shows that there was some clear thought put in. They put an animation of like the bridge collapsing, so it's like, okay, they clearly had some kind of intention behind this. And then there was like a dead end, and I couldn't progress any further. And I was like, I just sat there and I was thinking, like, what were they doing with this?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about all of these Lost Levels is like, it's cool. It's great to have the context too, but also just to kind of let your imagination run wild and say, okay, how would these pieces have fit together? What would this have looked like? What would the gameplay have been like here? And what would the total game have been like altogether? So yeah, I love that stuff.
It was very satisfying. I was very glad to hear that they were announcing that not only were there Lost Levels, but there was like a wealth of them. It wasn't going to be like one or two. It's like, no, we're Legacy of Kain fans are eating good. We're getting a lot of Lost Levels to look at.
Yeah.
The Seraphina Stronghold, the Defiance version, the early Defiance version. I had a great time playing through that, and I love that you can go down and you go down into the Elder God Shrine. I was shocked that like it just kept.
Have you played it since the patch?
They added more.
They added more. I missed it myself. I haven't checked it out yet, but apparently they've added a bunch more to the early Stronghold.
Wow.
Early Underworld too. Check out Early Underworld again.
Early Underworld. Okay. There's replayability just in that.
Yeah.
There's replayability just in the Lost Levels. And I think that says something because, usually you want to replay something that's finished, that's refined, or, you want to go back and comb over something. These are raw, unfinished levels, and there's still a reason to go back and replay them, to find something you didn't find before. I'm definitely going to check out that tunnel you mentioned about the Seraphina Stronghold. And
did you get to go into the Stronghold and see the Theurgists?
Yes, yes. The new enemy class. I saw them.
Not quite as complete as the necromancers that we get to see in the Dark Prophecy demo, which the fact that I'm
Yeah.
saying those words, Dark Prophecy demo, is just still kind of blows my mind.
Right. It was so cool to see. What really got my attention was the architecture. I was very happy to, first of all, when Cain spawns in, he's in the middle of this gruesome sacrifice.
Yeah.
And to me, that almost felt like, oh wow, they're really, really tying this back to Blood Omen 1.
Yeah.
In how like there's a very gory, dreadful air about this.
Almost
So
heavy metal cover aesthetic.
Yeah, I was living for that. And then as I progressed through, yes, I saw the new or not the new enemy class, but the unused enemy class from Dark Prophecy. And then I was looking at the architecture and I was like, wow, like the hill, it was Hilden architecture, correct?
Yeah.
I guess I never really took a look at it before, but like there's so much, like I was very intrigued by the way that like everything was designed around like bones and mechanics.
Yeah.
And like I was very happy to see it. I zoomed in the camera and I'm spending a little bit of time just like studying it. I love stuff like that.
The Dark Prophecy demo and the Lost Levels both are great, just amazing like game history preservation things. And it's just so cool that they were there. And I just at the expense of sounding like a paid salesman for Defiance Remastered.
And you a lot of checks on the table right now, man.
I mean, if I was, I would be doing a lot better than I am. I'll tell you that much. Let's say a mysterious stranger shows up on your doorstep and says, Slampbell, you can do whatever you want in the Legacy of Kain universe. You've got as much time, as much budget, whatever you want to do. It is your dream project. What is your dream? What is your dream Legacy of Kain project?
One of two things: either a safe retread, and I think that we discussed that before. I think that you said that the Maul series, for example, is a safe retread. It's a good series, but it goes through territory that it's not really messing with the canon too much, right? I would like to do something like that because I think that there's untapped stories that have, lots of questions that fans would love to see explained. And I think that that's the perfect answer for the question. That's initially what I wanted to see in a new entry. Instead we got a retread and, plus, a Laylath story. I would have liked to see, like I said, a story about, Mobius, a story about Mortanius, a story about Vorador, a story about Raziel at some point in his life that we hadn't explored yet. Or I would go for something that revolutionizes the series in a gameplay aspect, because I think that the one thing that Blood Omen and Soul Reaver did really well was they were fun to play. They had good gameplay aspects. I think that certain things got a little bit stale later on. I think that the combat in Soul Reaver 2 was a little bit more stale than Soul Reaver 1, even though it had more options. It just felt more stale. I think that Defiance, was a product of its era. There were a bunch of Devil May Cry clones coming out, so of course they're gonna ape a little bit from that. I don't even know what it would be, but I feel as though if there was a new entry, it should have something that is a testament for the series' ability to create groundbreaking gameplay elements. The realm shifting from Soul Reaver 1, that was groundbreaking for its
revolutionary
time. This was like a hardware thing, that the streaming off the disc, so that you had zero load times. That was like
nobody had ever seen that before. That was incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe instead of focusing on a new addition to the story, maybe focus on something that's like a safe retread, but just revolutionize the way the game is played. I think that if it's known for story, do it with a storytelling element. You don't necessarily need to tell it through gameplay. I think that it could be told through an animation. And that's kind of what's inspired me to want to do the reanimated scenes of the series. I want to kind of create a pitch. This is once again my lofty idea. I want to create a pitch for, what would Legacy of Kain look like if it was, a Netflix series or some kind of animated series? Ideally, and I also included this in the Crystal Dynamics survey. I said that once again, they should kind of follow suit with Castlevania.
Yeah, for sure. I'd watch it. Yeah, I love video game derived art. I have, let's see. Are you familiar with Yukoi Heroes?
I'm not, no.
So you might recognize these kind of, there we go. Get you a little closer. These kind of
I see Scorpion and Sub-Zero.
Yeah, so you see these are kind of Japanese inspired video game art pieces.
And I see, was that Samus in the middle?
Yep, that's Samus and let's see, Metroids, and then we've got Link in the middle. It's kind of hard to see.
I didn't see Link, but I saw a horse, so I figured it was Legend of Zelda.
Yep, and then I've got Snake on the far, kind of the middle right there, and then you can't see it, but you've got Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, and the top three are all from Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I love stuff like that. I absolutely love anything video game derived. I love to have art of that. And that's kind of.
So I was gonna save this until the end, but I feel like this is a perfect segue point for this.
Go for it.
I actually wanted to, and if you're comfortable with this, I wanted to gift you guys something.
Oh, nice. That's really nice of you. Thank you.
And it's one of my pieces right here. And I think that first of all, I know you're a Metal Gear fan.
Uh-huh.
Are you an Escape from New York fan?
I love Escape from New York.
So I did this Escape from Shadow Moses poster a couple years ago.
I love it. I love it.
And if you guys want, I'll mail this out to you.
That would be amazing.
I heard that you mentioned Metal Gear, and I was personally never super involved in the series, but one of my buddies was, and we watched a big influence on me when I first started animating was Ego Raptor or Aaron Hansen.
Okay, yeah.
And he made the Metal Gear Awesome series. So while I didn't watch the series, I understood some of the jokes through his animations. And we were always, back in high school, we were quoting, lines from it back and forth during lunch or whatever. And then at one point, we kept like grunting Meryl to each other so much. I picked up a cat one day, this newborn kitten, and I couldn't figure out her name. And then he comes over, he's like, "Just call her Meryl." Like, no,
Meryl.
Yeah, that ended up becoming her name, right? So, I understand that there's a big love for Metal Gear, and I am a big fan of John Carpenter movies. I have
me too.
I have a poster of The Thing crossed over with Among Us. It's the defibrillator scene.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
It's all the little beans, but Tentacles is coming out in the middle of the yellow one and picking one of them up in the air, and
that's awesome.
But I also like crossovers. I think that probably the majority of the work that I create is crossovers, where I take two series that either work together thematically, or two of my favorite series that I just want to I want to match them up and just see what happens.
I am a huge fan of crossover art, and that's kind of what I spent most of my money on at cons, is just art. And so like I really appreciate the Artist Alley and folks like yourself who put so much time and effort and fun into that and have fun with it.
So I went back to a show that I was at in November. They just had another iteration of it in May, just last weekend. And one of the guys came to the table and he was like, he didn't even open the binder yet. He goes, "So you got anything new?" And I'm like, "I've got about 25 new posters since the last time I was here." I'm like, "I've been a very busy boy." I realized that if I go to places multiple times, I'm just going to keep peddling the same artwork again and again. And while I might get lucky, I'd rather, I like to present something fresh. And if I'm ever not on the ground level creating art, I think that I'm gonna lose something later on. Like if I take like more of like a more executive position, like maybe like an art director position, God forbid, I think that I'm gonna lose some part of myself. So I always try to keep creating so that I stay fresh. And I was trying to I have this list, this ever-growing list that my girlfriend keeps track of, and she's always adding to it as well. It's a slog to get through it, but I've been slowly whittling it down, and then it grows, and then I whittle it down again. And I think that it just keeps me fresh, and it just gives me, it keeps me fresh. It keeps the content fresh, and then I just don't really tend to get, I'm not burnt out yet. I'm still creating. And I think that that's important. A body in motion stays in motion. If I keep creating, I will keep creating.
That's been our mentality too since we started the channel is, we we worked for a company that was entirely mercenary, right? And, everything that we did was just about making somebody money. And when we started our company, we said, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to have our YouTube channel where we try to do creative stuff. And for a while, it took us a while to find what it was we wanted to do. But like now it's at a point where, I really thought that I was going to do all 5 games. I was going to cover all 5 games, do a little video on all 5 games, do my manifesto video. And then after that, we'd move on from Legacy of Kain. Little did I know. And, but the ideas breed ideas. And,
Right.
We just keep having ideas for stuff. And, new games came out too. That helped.
Styled interviews like this, I think that they end up begetting ideas, right off the bat. I think that when we come together and this is almost like a brainstorm session if you think about it. You have your ideas, I have my ideas, and like we might think of things that we might have never thought about in a vacuum.
Yeah. And that's why collaboration is so important for the creative process. And I think what we're doing right here, when, just having a conversation, talking about how much we love Legacy of Kain, that's important for the community too.
Somebody might be watching this and somebody else might be inspired to create something.
Exactly. And the more people we have creating for Legacy of Kain, the more people talking about it, the more likely it is to continue. I'm going to ask you my favorite question to ask everybody.
Okay.
And that is, what does Legacy of Kain mean to you?
Oh boy. When I think I actually saw you ask this question in a previous interview, and I was telling myself, be prepared for this one. And this one totally blindsided me. So I think it's really hard to say because Legacy of Kain was introduced to me at such a young age. So obviously there's a nostalgia factor. I'm always going to be tied to the music and the visuals. Mm-hmm. And the music and the visuals in turn influenced, what I produce in some of my artwork, and a lot of my interests. I definitely think that anything to do with vampires, I'm immediately drawn towards. I love the idea of shifting between worlds. So I think that on the surface, a lot of the elements are things that just shaped me just because of when it reached me in life. But like I said before, I was drawn in initially by the visuals and the music, and then I stayed for the writing. I'll dig back through a quote or a conversation in Legacy of Kain, and I'll pick up something that I didn't the previous time. I think that any good medium is something that you can, it has a replay factor to it. I listened to the dialogue between Kain and Raziel in the Chronoplast, and, they speak in very vague terms, but when you play the game and then juxtapose what you just played through in the game with what they're saying, all of a sudden something's illuminated and you realize like, wow, like there's levels to the writing. Like, yes, they're speaking in like a very sophisticated style, and maybe we're not supposed to fully understand what they mean, but it's all laid out there. There's the pieces to the puzzle are all there. I guess to sum it up, what it means to me is it's a puzzle that just keeps on giving to us. And the part of the puzzle that isn't completed yet, I would like to see completed because, it's been a great puzzle so far.
I just want to tell you, thank you so much for reaching out. Where can we send people to help make you money? Where can they buy your stuff?
So I don't have an online shop. I wish I did.
Okay.
And I got one coworker, and if he's watching this video right now, Lewis, this is yet another reason why I should have an online shop. He's been bugging me for weeks to make an online shop. So if you want to find me, I do mail out my artwork. If you reach me through DMs, I'm chronically online. This is what I tell all my customers. I'm chronically online. If you ever want to reach me, just DM me on Instagram, Slampbell, Slampbell, and then there's variants of it. On X, it's Slampbell Prez, Pres. On Instagram, it's slambell.presents. If you type in Slampbell to Google, you should be able to find it. One thing I wanted to go over really quick before we head out. So I showed you the Metal Gear Solid poster.
Uh-huh.
I also have these other two posters I want you to take a look at.
Oh,
then my Raziel stylized as a Smash Bros. Fighter poster, and then my Blood Omen 1 Kane stylized in his
Blood Omen 2 pose. Yeah,
so,
nice.
I know that you do a coin flip on your playthroughs. I was curious, would you want to do a coin flip maybe to see which one of these I'll be sending out to you?
Sure. What? Give me just 1 second. I'll go grab it. I'm sure anyone who watches the channel knows the coin. On one side, we've got Kane, and on the other side, we've got Raziel. Okay, and we'll flip. If it ever landed on the edge, it'd break my hand.
I'd just send you both of them.
And it's Kane.
Okay, so we'll go for
Sweet.
Kane.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No worries.
That's super awesome of you. Really appreciate that. All right, everybody, that was Slampbell, and that was a great chat. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you once again for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Sure.
Do you have a cool Legacy of Kain story you want to share? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Ve Victus, and do the things.
Do the things, everybody.
Wow.